Hello and welcome to the second part in our series of webinars on your customer journey. Today's webinar is titled End-to-End Serverless Infrastructure, where we'll be looking to answer the questions: what is serverless, how it emerged, how you can incorporate it, and how your experience should be positive. I'd like to introduce Kabula. Kabula help businesses big and small with end-to-end cloud-based advanced analytics and data management. My name is Dom.
And I'm Joey.
Okay, now for a little bit of housekeeping. This webinar should last between 15 and 20 minutes. Please submit your questions. We will be getting back to you and answering those questions when we send over a copy of the webinar. Thank you for your time. It's over to you, Joe.
Okay. Let's start with the first question. What is serverless? To explain what is serverless, we need to briefly go through the evolutions of the server technologies. At first, organizations with the needs for larger scale computing will need to purchase and install servers on premise. And beside from these investments in the hardware and software, they will also need to hire and train a group of specialists to manage this infrastructure for them. Later on, some cloud providers who owns large numbers of servers start to package their computing and storage capacity into smaller units and sell it to organizations. But still, the users of these servers will need to configure and manage the servers by themselves. But fortunately, these infrastructure providers are constantly trying to manage the infrastructure for their users as much as possible. So they build an abstract layer on top of all these servers to hide the details, the technical details of configuring and setting up these servers from their users. And on top of this layer, they build different kinds of services which users can connect, users can connect to these services with their applications through different kinds of APIs. So in a nutshell, serverless is made of servers. Professor Cesar Hidalgo, the author of What Information Grows, mentioned in his top-selling book, said, "This world is different from the one in which our species evolved, only in the way in which matter is arranged." What he means is that the atoms in the world we're living right now are the same atoms existed in the world 1,000 years ago. The only thing that have changed is the way these atoms are arranged. This is similar to the evolutions of server technologies. So the servers are always there. It's just that they're being arranged differently, and the way we're using them are different. So back to our questions, what is serverless? Serverless is the experience created by cloud providers with a collection of services and technologies for their users to use the computing infrastructure without the need to manage the servers as if the servers do not exist. Now let's move on to the second question. Why serverless emerged? As we mentioned in the evolution of server technologies, in the on-premise settings, users will need to take care of everything from the low-level networking to their business applications. But as we can see in the trend, cloud providers are taking care of more and more part of the infrastructure for their users as the industry becomes more and more cloudy. In terms of scaling, there's a huge advantage in using serverless infrastructure. Within traditional server infrastructures, whenever you need to increase your capacity, you'll need to do a thorough estimation of what you need. And perhaps you'll need to invest in the capacity you don't need right now, which will definitely go into idle for a period of time. However, with serverless infrastructures, you can scale in a linear way smoothly and only pay for what you're using. Let's talk about some smaller scale projects, such as some initiatives or POC projects. These projects, by nature, are experimental, which means it's really hard to justify a heavy upfront investment for these projects. However, with serverless with serverless infrastructures, you can start small and scale incrementally. The benefit of this is just like what Joey Ito said, the director of MIT Media Lab. If you want to increase innovations, lower the cost of failure. If you can start small and grow incrementally, you got very little to lose. Then your company can play with all sorts of ideas and experiment different projects in an agile and iterative way. If we go back to questions of why serverless emerged, we can break it down into two different drivers. On the supply side, the infrastructure providers can benefit from the economy of scales from the centralizations of computing powers. On the other hand, on the demand side, for the businesses, the users of the infrastructures are looking for solutions for shorter time to value and a more agile and iterative development life cycle. Let's move on to the third questions, how to work with serverless infrastructures. If we compare the traditional server environment with the modern serverless environment, and for server environments, let's use the classic web development LAMP stack as an example. So you will need to first configure your Apache servers and then develop and deploy PHP or Python scripts to handle the request, and also to install MySQL or Postgres database to store your data. And you will also need some system admins to constantly maintain your Linux environment. On the other hand, for serverless environment, let's use AWS services as example. You can easily set up API gateway to trigger your Lambda functions, which you can easily deploy the functions you develop locally and talk to the storage. It's either Amazon S3 or Redshift database. And also in cases of migrating your databases or upgrading your softwares, in serverless environments, things will become much easier than traditional server environment. The AWS serverless environment, what we do here in Kabula is also to provide our users with serverless infrastructures. The major difference here is that AWS aims to support all kinds of general development activities. However, Kabula specializes only in data use cases. On the storage side, we're using Snowflake as our storage backend. Snowflake is a data warehouse system sitting on top of AWS S3 instances optimized for analytical use cases. On the computing side, Kabula has developed more than 600 components, which can be grouped into 3 different categories: extractors, transformations, and writers. Extractors are the HTTP clients, which you can use to connect to different data sources to pull the data into Kabula to create a single source of truth. Transformations are the script you can develop on Kabula to analyze or model your data. And the writers are the components that you can load the data to the destinations you prefer, such as different kinds of databases or different BI systems. Again, we can tell the difference between these 2 components from the language we supported. For Amazon Lambda functions, they support Golang, Node.js, C#, Java, and Python. But Kabula only specializes in data use cases, so we support SQL, R, and Python. From the classic LAMP stack environments to AWS serverless environments and Kabula, we can see the way we develop and manage our product lifecycle is very different. It's just like Paul Marie said, cloud is about how you do computing, not where you do computing. So if we go back to the questions, how to work with serverless infrastructures. And of course, for different organizations with different use cases, the way you work with serverless infrastructures are different. However, the underlying idea is that now you can only focus on developing your core business logics, and the rest of the activities, such as setting up and configure your environment, maintain it, to deploy your applications, to scaling, all these tasks can now be taken care of by your infrastructure provider. Now let's move on to the last questions. How do we make Kabula serverless? Kabula is a self-service platform for data analysts and data scientists. Even though Kabula is built with a collection of components and APIs, our users are using it as if it's a single application. As we can see in this diagram, this is the architecture of Kabula. The orange part of these diagrams are the only part that is exposed to our users. And as we can see, there's a lot of hard works happening under the hood. Starting from our backend Snowflake storage, we want to run some transformations or extractors on top of our snowflakes, so we develop multiple APIs to allow the communications between our components and our storage. We also integrate with Docker to allow our users to run Python and R applications on Kabula. And we also develop a queue systems that coordinates all different components and their activities on Kabula. Pablo Picasso has once said, "There is no abstract art. You must always start with something. Afterward, you can remove all traces of reality." To learn from the great master, we're dedicated to creating a smooth and intuitive platform for our users by encapsulating the tedious technical details into various components to create the experience that as if all the heavy lifting tasks do not exist. Thank you. That is all for today's sessions on serverless infrastructure.
Well, thank you for that, Jerry, and thank you for listening. We'll send over a copy of this recording with all the answers to your questions. If you have any additional data challenges, please drop us a line. And thank you once again. Goodbye.